Hi, I'm Tony DeLacy, and in this video I'd like to talk about how to find and to be in the best relationship. And it's quite a big ideal, and hopefully you're watching this and maybe the couple things I'm saying in terms of how to have the best and ideal relationship. You might be in one now or might be looking for one, and it's okay if one or two of the things that I maybe mentioned you're not doing. It's never too early to start. Relationships are complicated. It always is going to be complicated, and I suppose the first thing I should say is, when it comes to an ideal relationship, we're not talking about a relationship which has no faults. It has no arguments, disagreements. A perfect relationship is not one that doesn't have any friction, so to speak. And that's something that throughout this whole video, and hopefully throughout your whole life, always remember that a relationship is always going to have a couple of bumps on the way. And it's important to think of that, because if you go out searching for that ideal of a perfect relationship, which I want, should have no disagreements, then should a disagreement come up, well, it'll feel like going back to step one. And that can be very frustrating, and you might blame someone or even yourself for it, which you should never do. So, an ideal relationship is not one where nothing goes wrong. The perfect relationship, well, the first thing we have to do when talking about it is finding out what we want. And that is very essential. Why do we want a relationship? What is the motivation? Well, the motivation should be not short-term, never short-term, but long-term. Always long-term. In terms of, I want to live my life as best as I can, to the betterment of my own life. And what would make that even better? Not the be-all and end-all, but definitely something very, very special, because we as humans need it, is that companion. Life companion, you could say, but someone we want to be with. Be that a man or woman that you're desiring. So, what is the desire? The desire is making sure that the person we're with helps us better our lives, and at the same time bettering theirs. And that should be the motivation of those two people, especially yours. See, a relationship should not be used for anything else other than the betterment of your life, taking up a responsibility that can be so strong and fantastic. A relationship should give you a sense of meaning, a sense of purpose as well. Not the whole purpose, but a sense of it, a big part of it. And as you enter into one, make sure you have focused on yourself completely, so that you're able to actually focus on this as your purpose in the relationship. See, if you don't focus on yourself and take responsibility for yourself, you are then open to the shortcomings of very inept, I would say, motivations. For example, vanity or monetary reasons why you would go into a relationship. If you've sorted out yourself as a person, wanting to live an ultimately good and meaningful life, and the other person is too, well, that's a very strong start. And that is very important. It's all well and good me saying to you, That is something that you need to do. That you need to focus on yourself, and once you do that, once you feel integral, you're ready for someone else. That's very easy to say, but make sure the other person is also in that frame of mind, is also in that state. Because it's not sufficient to think, and I hope that you never think this, that you can just go outside and pick anyone out there and say, well, that's the person I'm going to have a long-term relationship with. Unfortunately, it doesn't work like that. For some people, they won't be in that space. They won't feel integral. They won't take responsibility for themselves enough to focus on the ultimate good that they want to pursue in their life, and thus in a relationship as well. What do we call this? I call it emotional maturity. Because being mature requires you to be responsible for yourself and your actions. And if you're mature and responsible, you want to be responsible in a good way. Not in a negative way, because that creates suffering. But in a positive way, with an idea of your better future self in your mind. And if you can do that, then you're emotionally mature. But if you can't, if the other person can't, if they're not emotionally mature, that they can't take responsibility for themselves, can't take responsibility for their own actions, expecting you to take all of the responsibility, expecting you to take the burden, expecting you to be the mature one, well, that's a relationship that's already doomed before it's even begun. So you need to look out for that. That is the base for which everything is built on. Emotional maturity is strong bedrock for which you can build great things. If you're emotionally immature, it's going to be built on sand. And that means that whatever you build on it could sink at any time. Emotionally mature people are predictable. Emotionally immature people are unpredictable. In a very negative way. So you need to make sure of that. Make sure that you are emotionally mature and they are too. Which means you have to be a detective in a way. You look at their lives. What are they trying to pursue? What is their purpose in life? Are they trying to pursue an ultimate good? Or are they doing things that are self-destructing? That are things that show that perhaps they're not emotionally mature. For example, are they stuck in the past? Some people are. A lot of people are. So if, for example, if they talk about their past enough, it shows that they're not emotionally mature to be ready for the present and the future. And if, for example, they're talking about certain things which perhaps require a bit more seriousness to it, maybe that's another hint. But there are many hints that you can possibly see, and you have to see them before you go head first in. Don't fall into the trap that people like me have done in the past, which I hold my hand up to doing. Where I come into contact with emotionally immature people and think maybe I can help or can bring them to emotional maturity. It's kind of painful for me to say because I learnt this the hard way. You can't do it. No matter how good you think you are to them, no matter what you try to give to them, no matter the help you try and offer, it'll never be good enough. Because we as people do not have the ability to delete the thoughts in someone's head or address them for them. No matter what we can do, we can only distract them. But eventually they'll come back to it. And the problem with that is that they will expect emotionally mature people to help them delete the thoughts inside their head. They will expect that. And what do we call that? It's called, I expect this person to make me happy. But we can't. We don't have the power to do that. We do not have the power to delete the thoughts in someone else's head. Therefore, we cannot help them out of their past. We cannot help them see the purpose and the potential and the power they have for their present and their future. And therefore, we cannot emotionally mature them. We cannot bring them to emotional maturity. That is a process that can only be done by the individual. And the sooner you understand this, the better. So you do not fall prey to what, for example, what I've done for so much of my life is try and do that. But in the end, all I do is distract them. All you do is distract them. And then when they realise that they're still in the same place, in the same space with all the same negative thoughts as they were before they met people, they met someone, maybe like you or me, then they blame you or me for not making them happy. And they go, well, this person didn't make me happy, I'll move on to the next person. But, as I've said, we can't delete the thoughts inside someone's head. Yet they place the responsibility on us for something that is impossible. We can try, we can give them the tools, but in the end, they have to finish the job. But if they believe you're the person that should help them, you're doomed to fail, and they will blame you. And what will that show? That person was emotionally immature and not ready, really, for a serious relationship. And therefore, that's something you have to look out for before it gets to that point. You cannot fix people. They have to fix themselves. One, it'll be a great power to them, much like hopefully it was a great power to you. And two, it's the most honest way. So, no matter how much you may like them, no matter how much you may love them, if they're emotionally immature, you have to let them go. Because you will not have the ideal and perfect relationship. It'll end. Either you'll see it, or they'll break your heart because they never saw the truth. Really, it's a tricky one, that. Tricky one to see. Anyway, so you have to look at whether the person is emotionally mature, and that might be great. And so if you do that, the bedrock of a proper relationship can be formed. If two people are emotionally mature. Because it'll pay off later on. Because emotionally immature people, if something goes wrong, they will take it to extremes. They'll say, if something is wrong, and we're going a bit further into the relationship now. If something goes wrong, an emotionally immature person will blow that up into a seismic area. For example, something, you don't do the dishes. Something like that. An emotionally mature person would go, okay, And this is how you solve problems in a relationship now. You don't do the dishes, an emotionally immature person will go, okay, you haven't done them. This is my reaction to them, so you not doing it. But, and I would prefer you to do them, but I'm prepared to listen to why you haven't done it. And you have to come up with an open mind, as maybe the person who didn't do them simply didn't have time or didn't notice it. And that's fine. That's how you solve a disagreement with emotionally mature people. Emotionally immature people will go, you haven't done the dishes, you're lazy, you don't put effort into it, don't put effort into me, you don't like me, something fundamental's wrong. So you see how a small issue can expand into something greater. That is the characteristic of emotionally immature people over different scenarios and experiences. So you have to be honest, have to find out what the person is before you get into the relationship with them. And so when you're in it, already we've talked about ways that you can deal with a problem. But you have to think as well, well, in a relationship, the main thing, this is the golden rule of any good relationship. Honesty. Truth. If you don't have trust, honesty, and truth, you have nothing. Be honest in everything. For what reason would you not be honest? To make sure you don't hurt their feelings? I think you would hurt their feelings more if you lied to them. So choose the lesser of two evils, which is always going to be tell the truth. No matter what you've done. Be honest. What other way is there? If you're not honest, how can that person trust you tomorrow, and the next day, and the next day, with greater and greater and greater things, greater responsibility, greater feelings? Well, how can they trust you? So you think about it. Be honest. Honesty is integral with everything. Because and also be open. Don't bottle things up, because it'll only get worse. If there's something bothering you, do exactly what I mentioned earlier. Just say, look, this is what's bothering me, but, and this is very important, if something is bothering you, you tell the person, but you have to be open-minded as to the fact that they might say something that you might go, okay, I didn't know that. Always talk to your partner, or into anyone, with respect. And with respect is, they might know something that I don't. And I might go, oh, okay, fair enough. If you do that, if you have a conversation like that, it's mature, but also it's something that you can grow with, and you can learn from. That's how to learn. You learn a lot more when things go wrong than when things go right, I can tell you, if you do it like that. So, you deal with problems like that, and you have to be open, because otherwise it gets worse. Otherwise that thing that festers in your mind, like why they didn't do the dishes, for example, can turn into that. Oh, you're so lazy, you're so bad, you don't look after me, you don't care about me. If you nip it in the bud, nip it at source, then you can deal with anything. So be open and honest. It seems fundamental, but how often people forget it. For expediency, say. But if you're searching for a higher and greater good with the relationship as well, you'll want to do that. So that the next day and the day after that, you'll know that you're learning, you're getting better, and you're working together better. So make sure you do that. And this little something which I definitely recommend to everyone is, no matter how long you've been together, whether it's a few months, a few years, 20, 30, 40 years, at least once a week, one evening, say a week, go on a date. Not with anyone, with the person you're with. Literally a date like you would be if you had just met or were dating right at the beginning. A dinner or something. It doesn't have to be like that, but some people forget to do that. You get too comfortable. At least once a week, say, let's go and have dinner together, just the two of us. At least just once a week. And in that time, you talk about everything that's been on your mind, and if anything, that's the time to unload absolutely everything if you have anything that you might have held back once or twice in the last week, say. That's the perfect time to say, look, I've been thinking about this. Call it a refreshing date. Once a week, that's all. But that's something I definitely recommend. An ideal relationship is one where you both can be emotionally mature, that whatever goes wrong, you can solve it properly. And like adults, by saying, okay, let's have a look at the actual problem, not the big one, not the overarching problem, because that might not actually exist. Because really, that more exists in your own mind. Unless it's something ridiculously fundamental, it really only exists in your mind. Let's deal with the facts as we have them. You haven't done the dishes. But that's it. And you solve it that way. And suddenly you're getting all the vital elements of what a relationship should be. And it should be a team effort. It should always be 50-50. But if you've sorted everything out at the beginning, if you're both emotionally mature, then it will always be 50-50. Because you'll both recognize the individual responsibilities you have with each other. So it cannot be a 70-30 thing. And a 70-30 thing always turns out when there's one emotionally mature person and one emotionally immature person. Now, when it comes to that lovely four-letter word, love, just remember this. Love is a very, very huge responsibility. And we throw it around far too much. The word love should be more revered. If you love someone, one, you better be damn sure. And maybe you are. But you have to be reverent to it. You have to know just what kind of gravitas that comes with. Because love is, one for sure, love is eternal. And love is something where you give everything to it. Maintaining your integrity as an individual, but it is a feeling, for sure. It's difficult because you can't see love in reality. And love cannot be something that you see immediately. It's something that's gained over time. Something that's earned over time. And you might be watching this as a grizzled veteran saying, I don't know if love exists. And for some, in a way, you're right, because it's not tangible. Actually, it's oxytocin. It's oxytocin in the brain that's swirling round that makes you want to love something. For example, you might say, I love ice cream. No, you don't. You love the feeling that you get when you have ice cream. It's the same thing in a relationship. Be sure. Do you love the person, or do you love the idea, love the feeling you get when you have them? Distinguish between that and love, which really is your commitment to that person forever. You might say, oh no, wait, that's marriage. No. Marriage is just a legal way of saying, I'm going to love you forever, and now we're going to be legally binded together. Love is supposed to be eternal. So if you've ever been in love with someone and they've ended it, or they've loved you and they've ended it, well, then they never loved you. It kind of goes away like that. Or they might have loved you, but the love ended when they got rid of you. Kierkegaard said this. It's much like marriage. If you love someone, but you think you might leave them sometime down the line, you're not in love with them. If you're married with someone and you think you might leave, then you're not married. And there's absolute validity in that. You have to love someone and think that, okay, for the rest of my life, I'm going to love them. So that's why I say you can't fall in love with someone immediately. You can only fall in love with someone who's emotionally mature, because then you can predict. You can't love someone who might not be there in about a day or two's time, or a week's time, or a month's time, or a year's time. You can't love them. Because at some point you'll have to, you'll then go, well, I can't love them anymore. It's supposed to be eternal. So when you say those three magic words, you better be damn sure. Because you are playing with the feelings of someone else. Not playing, but you're tapping into it. And love isn't blind. Love isn't supposed to be naive. Don't love someone who might hurt you, who has hurt you. See, the entire time in a relationship, you cannot forget yourself. You cannot forget what you're trying to attain. You cannot forget that you're supposed to live like you matter and treat yourself like you matter. Always remember that. And be responsible for it. And then don't be a divorce statistic. There's too many of them around. Because one, people didn't do the groundwork at the beginning, but two, they probably didn't see the signs, and three, they fell in love with something that perhaps wasn't even real far too quickly. Everything takes time. Don't make decisions, both bad or good, in a rush. Unless you can see actual things that are wrong with them. For example, that they are emotionally immature. Then yeah, don't even touch them. Don't even go near them. Don't even spend time with them, say. Because if you are truthful, if you are honest, and if you're trying to give that message over to someone who won't even listen to you, well, I can give you this piece of advice, which has been given to me and is probably one of the best pieces of advices that I've ever been given. If you're trying to talk to someone and they do not listen to you, stop talking. Stop talking. Otherwise, you devalue what you're trying to say. And deal with emotionally mature people. Leave the immature ones to figure stuff out for themselves. They might do. They might learn in a year or two, they might not. There's more people who never actually emotionally mature in their entire lives. So don't be thinking that I'll wait for that person to mature. They might never do it. For some people, it takes a few things to go wrong. For some people, it takes so much to go wrong that maybe that never happens. But what the hell? They're emotionally immature. They don't have to deal with it because they're not that responsible for themselves. So focus on yourself. Find a like-minded person, and everything will fall into place. An ideal relationship starts pretty much at the beginning. And all the other things I've said, when things go wrong, you deal with them literally, physically at source, and at whatever it is, and you fundamentally deal with it, should it need to be. But you do it quickly. You don't let it fester. That one date. You're honest. You're truthful. Everything you say must be true and honest. So people can trust you. Trust is based on truth. And that is how to have the ideal relationship. Now, maybe the way to make sure of that and not to fall prey to, I'll just take anyone, because if you think that, you'll fall prey to malevolent people, to people with short-term goals, emotionally immature people. Perhaps the way to have and to make sure you walk into an ideal, great relationship is to be happy to be single and to accept that might be there for a while. Because then when the time is right and the person is right, you'll know what to do. Thank you.